The morning was calm and bright. The sun was soft on the buildings and the streets were not too busy. Amara Collins drove a gray sedan slowly through a neighborhood she knew well. She had just left a community event at a library where people had discussed reading programs for teens. She wore a simple navy sweater and comfortable shoes. Her hair was tied back. There was no driver with her, no car behind her, no special plate that would give anything away about her life. She liked mornings like this, quiet, ordinary, safe. She stopped at a light and checked her mirrors. On the back seat sat a canvas, tote with a folder of notes, a small lunchbox, and a sealed envelope she needed to drop off at a post office later. Her handbag sat on the passenger seat half open with her wallet inside. She kept her hands on the wheel and hummed a small tune she remembered from the radio. The light turned green. She drove forward. A police cruiser turned the corner and pulled in behind her. She did not think much of it at first. Police cars passed on this street often, but then the cruiser stayed close, too close, and a moment later, the red and blue lights came on. She looked down at her speed. She was under the limit. She checked her signals. She had used them. Her mind began running through simple questions. Is my taillight out? Did I miss a sign? She turned on her right blinker and pulled over to the curb in a wide, safe space. She put the car in park. She rolled down the window. She put her hands at the top of the wheel where they were easy to see. The air felt different now, a little tight. She breathed slowly and spoke to herself in a quiet voice the way she always did in moments that needed calm. Stay polite. Be clear. Ask before you reach. She had said these same words to many people in her life. Neighbors, students, friends. Keep your hands visible. Say what you are doing. If you need to get your ID, say where it is before you move. In the side mirror, she saw two officers exit the cruiser. One was older with a firm jaw and a square stance. The other looked younger, maybe not long out of training, with a careful walk and eyes that moved a lot as if he were making a list of every little detail. The older officer's body camera light blinked. So did the younger one's. She could hear the soft chirp that meant the cameras were recording. The older officer approached the driver's side. The younger officer moved to the passenger side, a few feet back, so he could see her hands and the inside of the car. The older officer spoke first, quick and direct. License and registration. His voice sounded like someone in a hurry. Not mean, just rushed and firm. The younger officer added nothing, only watched her face and her hands. Amara kept her hands on the wheel. Good morning, officer. My license is in my wallet, in my bag, on the passenger seat. May I reach for it? She spoke slowly and clearly. She had learned that steady sentences settle the air. The older officer's eye flicked toward the bag. What's your hurry this morning? He asked. It wasn't a question about the license, but she tried to answer it anyway. No hurry, she said. I'm just heading home from a community event at the library. She waited for his signal. He did not give it. He asked, Do you know why I pulled you over? She shook her head slightly. No, sir. He said. Her registration sticker looked off to him from behind, and he wanted to check. He asked if the car was hers. She nodded. Yes, sir, this is my car. She kept her hands still. My registration is in my glove box. May I reach for it after I get my license? For a few seconds it was quiet. She felt a small hope that this would be simple and short. The older officer finally said, Okay, slowly. The younger officer shifted his feet and leaned a little to see better through the passenger window. Amara turned her head toward her bag and said the words she always said before any movement. I am going to reach now. My right hand will pick up my bag and I will take out my wallet. She moved carefully. She lifted the bag and placed it on her lap. She opened it farther with 2 fingers so the inside was easy to see. She pulled out a simple gray wallet and placed it on top of the bag, in full view. Then she spoke again. I am opening my wallet. She flipped it open, took out her license and held it with 2 fingers so her fingertips did not cover her name. She turned back to the window and offered the license. The older officer took it after a very small pause, as if he had expected something else to happen. He studied it. glanced at her face, then looked back at the card. The younger officer watched, without speaking. A passing jogger slowed to see what was going on, then kept running. A delivery van crept by and then turned at the corner. "Registration," the older officer said. His tone stayed short. "Yes, sir," Amara said. "It's in my glove box. I'm going to open it now." She set the wallet back in the bag and returned the bag to the passenger seat. She placed her hands on the dash for a second so everyone could see where they were. Then, slowly, she lowered her right hand toward the glove box. She pressed the button. The door dropped down. Papers and a small flashlight were inside. She kept her fingers open and moved only the papers on top until she found the registration slip and insurance card. She lifted both, closed the glove box, gently, and placed the documents on the dash before picking them up with 2 fingers and handing them over. The older officer took the papers. He glanced again at her face, and his eyes moved quickly to the back seat and then back to the papers. "Any reason your plate looks different?" he asked. She had no idea what detail he meant. The plate had the standard state design. She said, "I'm not aware of any issue. The car is registered and insured." Her voice was still warm, still patient, just slightly softer now because she felt the tension rise a little for reasons she could not see. He said he would run her information and stepped back toward the cruiser. The younger officer stayed near the passenger side, closer now. He seemed curious and unsure at the same time. He looked at her bag and the notes on the back seat. He glanced at the body camera light on his chest, then at hers. She kept her hands on the wheel again, fingers loose, palms open. A breeze came through the window and moved a corner of the envelope in the back. It was such a small thing, yet it drew her eye and calmed her breath. She thought about the letter inside and the person who would read it, a person who trusted her to do hard things in a steady way. The older officer returned more quickly than she expected, and the air tightened again. He held her license and papers. "Step out of the vehicle," he said. His voice had no extra words. The younger officer shifted his weight and looked at his partner, surprised. "Sir," Amara said, "may I ask why?" It was a normal question, and she asked it gently. "Step out," he repeated. "Now." She nodded slowly. "I will step out," she said, "and I will keep my hands visible." She unbuckled her seatbelt with careful fingers and said aloud, "I am unbuckling my seatbelt." The belt clicked back. She moved her left hand to the door handle in clear view and pulled it. The door opened a little. She kept her right hand high where the younger officer could see it through the passenger window. She shifted her feet to turn her body toward the open space. "Don't reach," the older officer said suddenly, sharp and loud. The word hit the air like a door slam. Amara froze. Her right hand was still in the air. "I am not reaching," she said, calm but a little breathless. "I am stepping out." She moved 1 foot to the pavement. The younger officer took a half step forward as if to help steady the door. He stopped himself and looked to his partner again, waiting for a signal. A couple on the sidewalk had paused to watch. One person across the street lifted a phone, not obvious, but not hidden, either. It was the kind of moment people record now without thinking. The small red light on the body cameras kept blinking. The city's sounds, birds, a distant truck, a child laughing somewhere, seemed to hush themselves. The space between the officers and Amara now felt like a thin glass sheet that could crack if anyone pushed too hard with a word or a move. "Hands behind your back," the older officer said. "Sir," she began, still gentle, "I would like to comply, and I also would like to understand the reason for this request. May I ask for a supervisor?" She said each part slowly, not to argue but to buy a little time for clarity to catch up with the speed of the moment. The younger officer looked uneasy, his eyes moving between her calm face and his partner's hard line. "Stop talking and do as you're told," the older officer said. His tone carried weight. Amara nodded once, trying to make each second hold her steady. "I am going to move my hands," she said. "My left hand will leave the door and go behind my back now." She slid her left hand back, palm open. "My right hand will follow." She began to lower her right hand. It was exactly then that the older officer's voice rose again. "She's resisting," he said, as if the words were a decision and not a description. The younger officer's head snapped toward him, confused. From the sidewalk, someone said, "She's not," but the voice was small against the pressure building in the space. Amara kept her shoulders down and her breath even, but inside she felt a fine shaking start in her chest. She focused on simple things, the texture of the door against her fingers, the small breeze on her cheek, the cool air from the car's vent. "I am complying," she said softly. "Please keep your cameras on. Please call a supervisor." She placed her right hand behind her back, palms still open. The older officer moved in close. She could see the lines. The older officer's hand closed around Amara's wrist with a firm, quick motion, and the space between them became very small, like a doorway someone was trying to move through without knocking. His grip was not kind, not soft, and it sent a message that this stop was no longer just a check of papers. Amara kept her voice calm. "I am complying," she said. "My hands are behind my back." She tried to angle her shoulders so her balance stayed steady. The younger officer hovered a few steps away, his eyes wide with worry, as if his mind was trying to match what he had learned in training with the quiet facts in front of him. "Stop resisting," the older officer said, even though her hands were already in place. The words fell like a label, and labels can be heavy. Amara felt a small shake start in her arms, not from anger, but from the way quick moments pull the body tight. She took a slow breath and spoke clearly, one sentence at a time, as if she were reading instructions for safety out loud. "Officer, I am not resisting. Please keep your camera on. Please call a supervisor now." She said it in a tone that carried steady care, like a teacher in a busy room. On the sidewalk, someone whispered, "She's calm," and another voice said, "Keep the cameras on." The city's sounds returned in thin threads, a bird on a wire, a bus door opening, footsteps somewhere behind her. The older officer shifted closer, and his forearm came across her upper back in a way that made breathing harder, not impossible, but thinner, as if the morning air had turned narrow. She felt a pressure on the side of her neck that made speech less easy. She kept her sentences short to save air. "I need a little space to breathe," she said, not pleading, just stating a need. "I will stand still." The younger officer's shoulders lifted as if to take a step, then dropped back. "Sir," he said to his partner, voice low, "maybe we can slow down." His words were not loud, but they were different from silence. The older officer did not answer him. He repeated the same phrase again. "Stop resisting," as if that phrase alone could hold the moment in his hands. Amara did not argue. She knew arguments can heat a tight space. She tried to place her feet wider for balance. She kept her palms open where he could see them behind her back. A small crowd began to form, not a big one, just the size of a city corner. A delivery driver stepped out of his van and stood by the door. A woman in a green sweater, her phone raised, spoke into the camera in a calm voice, "I'm recording for safety." Another person dialed for medical help and said, "There is a traffic stop and someone is having trouble breathing. Please send paramedics." The air felt like a string drawn a little too tight, humming with worry. Amara focused on small, steady facts to keep her mind clear. The ground was level. The curb was only a few inches away. The door of her car was still open. The body camera light on the older officer's chest kept blinking. The light on the younger officer's chest did too. She thought about a short list she had made that morning. Return library keys, send a note to a staff member about their parents' health, sign a letter for a scholarship fund. The list did not fit this moment, and yet thinking about it helped. Her hold on to simple goodness. "I am going to take a slow breath," she said in a clear tone that could be heard by both officers and the phones nearby. "Please keep space around my neck." The older officer's forearm shifted up for a second as he adjusted his stance, and that tiny change gave her just enough air to speak a little better. She used it for simple facts. "My name is Amara Collins. I am complying. I request a supervisor." She did not add her title. She did not move to reach for anything. She stood as steady as she could. The younger officer took one more small step forward, careful, almost like someone approaching. A small scared bird. "Sir," he said again, "we can wait for a supervisor." His eyes flicked to the phones and back. His face said he knew this could go two ways, one that brings calm or one that brings harm. The older officer's jaw stayed tight. He spoke to Amara instead of his partner. "You were moving your hands." She answered with simple truth. "I moved my hands only after you told me to place them behind my back. They are there now. I will keep them there." Across the street, the couple who had paused earlier had set their grocery bags on the ground. The man called out, not angry, just firm. "We see her complying." The woman in the green sweater said softly into her phone, "Time is moving. Slow, but it is still moving." The delivery driver said into his radio, "Paramedics on the way." It was strange how many little voices made a kind of net. The older officer's forearm eased a small amount, perhaps because the younger officer's words had finally landed in his mind, or perhaps because the gathering eyes made the moment feel more seen. Amara took a careful breath and said, "Thank you." She stayed very still. She did not use the space to turn or pull away. She used it to speak a clear request again. "Please call a supervisor now. Please keep your cameras on. I will stand here." For a second, nobody moved. Then, as if a gear clicked, the younger officer lifted his radio and asked for a supervisor at their location. The words sounded plain and official, like turning on a light. He gave the street name and the block number. He added, "No medical emergency at this time, but breathing concerns reported." That last bit mattered. It put gentle care into the air without drama. With the call made, the older officer's voice lost a small piece of its edge. He still kept her hands, but he lowered his forearm from the edge of her neck to her upper back in a way that felt safer. Amara rolled one shoulder very slightly to ease a pinch. "Thank you," she said again, naming the safer change so it would stay. She continued, "I will remain still until a supervisor arrives. I ask that no more pressure be placed on my neck area." Her words were not legal arguments. They were simple requests for safe behavior, the kind people can hear even when they are under stress. The younger officer nodded, almost to himself, as if grateful for instructions spoken in kind language. He moved to where he could see both Amara and his partner's hands. The crowd stayed at a respectful distance. The woman in the green sweater kept recording. The delivery driver watched the street so cars would not press in. Time stretched in, a thin line. In that thinness, Amara did something she often taught others to do in tense moments. She named 5 things she could see: the blinking camera light, the shadow of a tree branch on the hood, a small crack in the curb, the red strap on a neighbor's satchel, the silver ring on the younger officer's finger. She named 4 things she could feel: the fabric of her sweater on her arms, the slight warmth of the morning sun, the cool air from her car vent on her cheek, the steady touch of the older officer's hand on her wrist. She named 3 things she could hear: a bus brake sighing, a bird chirping twice, the distant click of a crosswalk signal. She named 2 things she could smell: the warm dust of the street, a faint coffee scent from somewhere. She named 1 thing she could taste: the mint from her morning tea. Naming those things brought her back to the ground, to safety inside her body, even while the outside felt uncertain. A few minutes later, though it felt longer, sirens sounded softly, not loud, and then stopped as a second squad car pulled in behind the first. A supervisor stepped out. He was middle-aged, clean uniform, steady gait, and a face that looked like it knew busy streets and long days. He took in the scene in a breath. A woman standing still with hands behind her back, one officer holding her wrists, another standing, ready. A small crowd at a distance, phones up, eyes on. The supervisor's hand went to his own camera to be sure it was on. He said in a clear voice that carried, "I am the supervisor on scene. Everyone remain calm. We will review what is happening." The older officer spoke first, fast, as if speed could shape truth. She was resisting during a stop. The supervisor held up a hand gently. Thank you. I will ask each person to speak in turn. Sir, please lower your voice. Ma'am, he looked at Amara. Are you able to breathe? She answered in a steady tone. Yes, I can breathe. I am calm. I am complying. I have asked for cameras to stay on and for a careful process. The supervisor nodded. Not as a favor, but as a sign that a process would, in fact, happen. Good, he said. We will keep cameras on. We will document. Officer, ease your hold to standard control. No pressure near the neck. The words were measured. They mattered. The older officer adjusted his hold as told. The younger officer let out a breath he had been holding without knowing it. The supervisor asked Amara, Do you need medical assistance? She said, I would like paramedics to check me when they arrive. The supervisor spoke into his radio to confirm that request. He then addressed the gathering. Thank you for staying at a safe distance. Your recordings may be important. Please continue to give us space. In the calmer air, Amara asked for one more thing that would keep the moment honest from start to finish. Sir, she said to the supervisor, I request that all body camera footage be preserved, from first contact to the end of this stop, including audio. I also request that bystanders who recorded provide their names if they wish, so statements can be taken. The supervisor nodded again. Understood. We will preserve footage. Anyone who recorded, you may stay to provide your name to an officer not involved in this interaction. A light ambulance rolled up. 2 paramedics stepped out with a simple kit. They were quiet, trained to walk into tense scenes. The supervisor stood with a steady posture, his eyes moving from Amara to the 2 officers, then briefly to the small group of bystanders. He asked Amara if she could share her name for the report. The moment had reached a point where identity would not heat the air but guide it. Amara spoke in a clear, even tone. My name is Amara Collins, she said. I am the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The street became quieter than before, as if someone had turned down a volume knob the whole block shared. The older officer's grip softened in a quick, reflexive way. The younger officer's eyebrows rose, but he did not step back or forward. The supervisor did not allow surprise to control him. He nodded once, kept his voice level, and said, Thank you for identifying yourself, Director Collins. We will verify credentials and proceed with care. Amara did not move to reach for anything. She kept her hands where they were and used words to keep everyone safe. My credentials are in my wallet, which is in my bag on the passenger seat. I will not reach for them. If you assign an officer, I will give approval for that officer to remove the wallet and present the credentials to you and the camera. The supervisor accepted that plan. He assigned the younger officer to handle the wallet because his stance showed care and attention to detail. The younger officer spoke each step, so the camera would hear. I am opening the passenger door. I am picking up the bag. I will remove the gray wallet. I will open the wallet and present credentials to the supervisor. He did exactly that. Slow and plain, like reading a recipe that must turn out right the first time. The supervisor examined the credentials. They were exactly what they should be. The design, the seals, the numbers, the photo that matched her face now. He lifted his radio and spoke to dispatch for verification through the usual secure channel. A brief pause followed, filled with quiet things. A leaf skimming the street, a bicycle bell far away, the small whir of an air conditioner on a window. Dispatch confirmed with a short official sentence that did not make drama of it. The credentials matched Director Amara Collins. The supervisor thanked dispatch and clipped the radio back. He returned to Amara and said, Director, would you like to change how we proceed? She shook her head just a little. No special treatment, she said. We will follow the correct local process. I request that this interaction be documented fully, that all footage be preserved, and that an internal review begin at once. I would also like to contact my office so that an independent record is created. The supervisor agreed. He turned to the older officer and spoke in a calm, direct way that supported safety. Ease your hold further. Standard control only. Do not restrict breathing. We will remove restraints once we complete the immediate safety checks and conclude. There is no safety risk. The older officer followed the instruction without argument. He seemed smaller in that moment, not in height, but in the weight of certainty he had carried a few minutes before. The paramedics, still nearby, asked if Amara wanted a second quick check now that the hold had changed. She said yes. One paramedic rechecked pulse, looked at the color in her face, listened to a few breaths. Steady, the paramedic said. We still recommend a full check later. The supervisor nodded and added that note to the growing file. Amara spoke again to set a fair, clear path forward. Sir, please assign an officer not involved in the stop to collect names and contact information of any willing bystanders who recorded. Please also assign someone to note the timestamps of key steps: first contact, request for documents, order to exit, call for a supervisor, medical check, and identity verification. The supervisor divided these tasks. The younger officer took the clipboard and moved to the bystanders with a quiet thank you. Another unit that had arrived began noting times. The woman in the green sweater said her name carefully into the clipboard. The delivery driver gave his company phone number. The couple across the street listed what time they arrived at the corner. The supervisor turned to the older officer and asked open, essential questions. What was the stated reason for the stop? The older officer answered, plate irregularity suspected. What irregularity? The supervisor asked. The older officer said. Color tone looked off from behind. The supervisor kept his voice neutral. We will check the plate against the state database and compare the physical plate to the recorded plate style. He then asked, what led to your conclusion that the driver was resisting? The older officer's mouth tightened for a second. She asked questions and moved her hands, he said. The supervisor did not challenge the words, he set them into process. We will review footage to see the pace of compliance, the commands given, and whether the hold was proportional. We will document your words and her words. Amara listened without inserting herself into their exchange. When there was a pause, she spoke a single, guiding sentence that carried both grace and a boundary. A title should not be needed for safe treatment, she said gently. Please let the record show that calm words were used and clear requests were made. The supervisor nodded. It will, he said. He turned to Amara. Director Collins, at this point there is no safety concern. I will remove the restraints and ask that you remain on scene to provide your statement. We will then release you. He asked the older officer to remove the restraints. The older officer did so with hands that were now careful, if not yet fully relaxed. Amara rolled her shoulders to ease the stiffness, then placed her hands in front of her where everyone could see. Thank you, she said, and meant it, not as praise but as a mark of the safer space. The younger officer returned with a small list of names. He handed it to the supervisor and met Amara's eyes briefly. What passed there was simple. Look that said he understood more now than he had 10 minutes ago. He stepped back to continue noting timestamps and details. The supervisor began to take Amara's statement on camera in plain steps. Please describe the start of the stop. She explained the lights, the pullover, the first request for license and registration, her method of speaking steps before moving, the placement of her hands. Please describe the moment you were asked to exit, he said. She described how. She asked for the reason, then said she would comply, unbuckled while narrating and moved with visible hands. Please describe the hold, he said, choosing simple words. She explained the pressure on the upper back and near the neck area, the shortness of breath and her request for space, the call for a supervisor, and the change in hold after that call. She kept her tone even and factual, the way she would want any person to tell their story when the facts were heavy. He asked if she had anything to add. She looked at the camera light and said, I ask that training on duty to intervene be refreshed for all officers, and that de-escalation steps be repeated with care during stops. Pause, explain, request, wait. These are not extra steps, they are the steps. The supervisor wrote that down in his notes, not as an order, but as part of the record that would shape what came next. The immediate checks were complete. The state database confirmed the plate and registration were valid, and the plate style matched the state's current design. The original reason for the stop did not stand. The supervisor spoke plainly to the camera and to those present. The registration and plate are valid. The driver has been cooperative. The driver is released. He then turned to Amara. Director Collins, you are free to go. Would you like an escort to a clinic, or would you prefer to arrange that with your office? She said she would arrange it with her office and requested a case number for the report. He provided it, writing it on a card and reading it aloud for the camera. Before she left, Amara did something that set a path for the hours and days ahead. She asked the supervisor if he would accept a call from her chief of staff to coordinate the transfer of all relevant materials to the appropriate review bodies. This is not to bypass your process, she said. It is to ensure an independent record is kept in full. The supervisor agreed. He provided a station number and his name badge number. He then turned to the older officer. You will provide a statement at the station immediately and turn in your body camera for upload, he said. To the younger officer, he said, you will upload your footage, your notes, and the bystander contacts, and then report to me. Both officers agreed. Amara stepped a few feet away to place a call to her office. She kept her voice low, careful to respect the public space. She asked her chief of staff to place a legal hold on all communications related to the incident, to notify the Office of the Inspector General for awareness, and to coordinate with the city's internal affairs. She asked for a medical check, to be arranged, and for a communications note that would say only the essential truth. There was an incident during a local stop. The local process was followed. A review was underway. Respect and calm were requested from all. As she ended the call, a bystander, the woman in the green sweater, approached the supervisor and asked if she could say something short. The supervisor nodded. She turned to Amara and spoke gently. I'm sorry this happened, the woman said. Thank you for staying calm. It helped all of us stay calm too. Amara smiled, small and real. Thank you for recording, she said. Public eyes can guard public moments, the older. He seemed to search for her. The same afternoon, the city moved from a tent street to a room with glass walls, bright lights, and a long table. Internal Affairs opened a case right away. On the wall, a simple timeline appeared in clear handwriting. 8.17 lights on, 08.19. License in hand, 0821 request to exit. 0822 pressure applied. 0824 supervisor radioed. 0828 supervisor on scene. 08.31 medical check. 0836 identity verified. Body camera files began to upload. Dispatch audio, plate queries, paramedic notes, and bystander clips were placed into the folder. No one spoke fast. They spoke like builders laying careful bricks. The supervisor from the scene wrote a full account while the details were fresh. He used plain words: what he saw, what he ordered, what changed, who stood where. He did not try to shape feelings into facts. He wrote, driver complied, pressure near neck area observed, breathing concern voiced, hold adjusted on my order. Paramedics checked, registration valid. The younger officer wrote a statement too. He was honest about his uncertainty and the small step he took. I asked to slow down. I requested a supervisor. I will seek more training. The older officer was asked to give his statement and to turn in his camera for upload, which he did. At City Hall, the police chief, the mayor, and the city attorney met for a short briefing. The chief did not wait for a press cycle to force action. He signed an immediate bulletin. Effective now, any pressure near the neck area is prohibited, except in clearly defined life-threat situations. Immediate duty to intervene is required when a partner shows signs of escalation. Medical assessment must be called promptly when a breathing concern is voiced by any person. He told his training unit, by Friday, I want a new short module officers can watch on shift. Pause, explain, request, wait. Make it practical. Make it simple. Make it stick. Amara went to a clinic for a full check as the paramedics had advised. The doctor listened to her lungs, checked her neck and back, and wrote a short note. Tension-related strain. Rest recommended. Follow-up in 48 hours. She asked the clinic to keep the note available for the city's review, then returned to her office. She did not plan a speech. She planned structure. Her chief of staff called the office of the Inspector General to ensure an independent watch. A legal hold was placed on all materials touching the event. A short public line was drafted. A2. Local incident occurred. Local process is underway. We ask for calm, facts, and respect. By evening, a town hall was announced at the community center. Folding chairs were set in neat rows. A sign on the door said, "Ground rules. 1 mic, 3 minutes per person. Speak to ideas, not people, no shouting." The police chief came and sat on stage with the mayor. The supervisor sat 2 chairs away. The younger officer came in plain clothes just to listen. Amara arrived without a team. She thanked the room for coming and said one clear thing: a title should not be needed for dignity. The process will be open, careful, and complete. Then she took a chair in the front row and listened like everyone else. People spoke in calm, strong voices. A retired bus driver said, "Time is a tool. When an officer uses time, the street stays safe." A nurse said, "Please teach officers to hear the words, 'I need air,' as a health alert, not a debate." A store owner said, "Announcements help. You're stopped for this reason. We will do these steps. Please keep hands visible." That sentence lowers worry. The chief wrote these sentences down, not as public theater, but as instructions to carry back to the training floor. The next morning, the department posted a short, readable memo on its website. It listed immediate changes in simple words. No pressure near neck. Duty to intervene if a partner escalates. Call medical if anyone says breathing is hard. Speak, reasons and steps at every stop. Wait for a supervisor when a driver requests one unless there is a clear safety risk. It also promised data. Starting next quarter, we will publish traffic stop numbers, reasons, outcomes, and demographics, so the public can see patterns. It invited the community to a ride-along program focused on de-escalation, where residents could watch officers use words to slow tense moments. In the review room, internal affairs watched the footage frame by frame. They did not hunt for heroes or villains. They searched for truth. They compared commands given with movements seen. They measured seconds between orders and compliance. They listened to breaths and tone. They noted when the younger officer asked for a supervisor and when the older officer adjusted his hold. They saved the paramedic's note and synced it to the time the hold eased. They concluded which steps matched policy and which did not. They did not rush the report, but they did not drift either. Each page was a small step forward. The district attorney's office assigned a senior reviewer to monitor the case. The office stated a fair frame. We will wait for the full internal report, then decide whether administrative discipline is sufficient or whether legal action is appropriate. The DA also sent a memo to all local agencies reminding them that policy violations with health risk must be reported to the State Standards Board, even when no severe injury occurs. It was a gentle but firm reminder that small harms deserve full light. Inside her own agency, Amara began work on a broader lesson. She gathered a group that did not usually sit together. Patrol officers from different cities, a training sergeant, a civil rights educator, a trauma counselor, a community mediator, and a public defender known for calm solutions. In one afternoon, they shaped a 5-step guide called Peace. Pause for 1 full breath. Explain the reason and the next step. Ask for the other person's plan. Where is your wallet? How will you reach? Check understanding. Tell me what you will do first. Escort with care, which means control without harm and a clear duty for a partner to speak up if the line is crossed. The guide fit on 1 page. It could live in a breast pocket and in a memory. Amara offered the Peace Guide to any department that wanted it, free, with a short video and a role-play script. She did not point to herself in the video. She pointed to the method. These steps are not extras, the narrator said over a scene of a calm stop. These steps are the job. The city where the stop happened agreed to pilot the guide. The chief asked for a 30-minute shift video and a 2-hour monthly in-person session where officers practiced words, not just tactics. He also added a simple check card to each patrol car. Say the reason, say the steps, wait for the answer. Keep space to breathe. In a quiet office at the station, the older officer met with the department counselor as required. The counselor asked basic questions: how he manages stress, what he does when he feels rushed, what signs tell him to slow down. The officer did not become a new person in 1 hour, but he named 3 things he would do differently. I will count to 3 before repeating an order. I will accept the word supervisor as a yellow light, not as a challenge. I will listen for breathing concerns as a health cue. The counselor wrote these down and scheduled a follow-up. The younger officer signed up to assist the training unit. He offered to model duty to intervene in scenario practice, showing recruits how to speak to a partner with respect and firmness. Let me take the lead. Let's call a supervisor. We can slow down. He also asked the union to support an award for officers who prevent harm by speaking up early. It was a quiet idea, but it made a small door where more light could enter. The supervisor received a brief note from the chief thanking him for taking clear control and naming safe steps on scene. It was not a medal. It was better. It was a message to all supervisors that calm leadership in hard minutes would be noticed and expected. He shared the note with his team and said, "We will be measured by what we prevent, not just what we solve." By week's end, the city launched a clean, simple web page with the case number, the policy changes, and a promise of updates when the report was complete. It also posted a sign-up for listening sessions in 3 neighborhoods. Each session had the same frame as the town hall: 1 mic, time limit, speak to ideas. Officers would attend to listen, not to defend. The page also linked to a short "Know Your Stop guide for drivers. Keep hands visible, speak your steps before moving, ask for a supervisor if needed. You have the right to medical help if you feel unwell." Amara kept her voice steady in every call. She did not name anyone in public or call for quick punishment. She called for careful accountability and strong training, for clear data and open doors. In a brief meeting with the mayor, she asked for one more structure: an independent civilian review panel with access to footage, policies, and complaint data, able to make public recommendations. The mayor agreed to send that plan to the council. "We need a steady window that does not fog," Amara said. "Trust grows in clear air." The internal affairs report was not finished yet, but change had already begun to land in visible ways. Laminated peace cards in patrol cars, a ban on dangerous holds written in bold, a checklist taped inside station doors that read, "Say the reason. State the steps. Wait. Watch the breath. Call the supervisor." In roll call rooms, sergeants asked officers to practice a simple announcement script. In classrooms, trainees took turns being both driver and officer. They learned how it feels to move slowly, to narrate each step, to hear a firm voice that does not shout. At the end of that week, the community center lights turned off after another listening session. Chai. A week later, the internal affairs report was ready. It did not shout. It was clear and simple. It said the reason for the stop did not stand. It said the driver kept her hands visible, spoke her steps before moving, and followed requests. It said pressure near the neck area was applied and that the driver voiced a breathing concern. It said a supervisor was called and the hold was eased. It named each minute and matched it with camera time. It recommended discipline for the older officer, coaching and training credit for the younger officer, and a thank you note for the supervisor for steady command. The chief signed the findings and posted a public summary that anyone could read without special skills. The summary listed the steps that would change, the timelines for training, and a promise to publish updates. It did not hide the hard parts. It also did not paint anyone as a monster. It treated the city like a grown community that could look at facts and learn from them. The older officer was removed from field duty. An outside standards board reviewed the case and the department's new rules, then set a clear path: a long suspension without pay, mandatory training, performance probation, and removal from any training roles. The board also ordered a review of his past stops to see if patterns needed attention. This was not about blame alone. It was about safety tomorrow. The younger officer received a formal note in his file that recognized his request for a supervisor and his calm steps. It also assigned him to help teach duty to intervene because voices that speak early can change the weather of a scene. The supervisor was asked to present a short session to other supervisors on how to take steady command and hold a safe frame in tense minutes. Amara chose a private restorative meeting, as she had said she would. It was held in a simple room with plain chairs and a round table. A trained facilitator guided the talk. There were no cameras because it was not a show. It was a chance to meet his people and talk about choices. The older officer spoke first. He did not defend. He described the quick thoughts he had and where they led him. He named the moment when his mind chose speed instead of pause. He said, with steady voice, that he was sorry for the harm and the fear. Amara listened. She asked questions about his training, about his stress, about what warning bell might help him next time. She then shared what the hold felt like from inside her body, how time changes when air feels thin, and how the right words can make the air wider. The younger officer talked about the pull between loyalty and duty, and how duty means speaking up to a partner, not against a partner. The facilitator wrote a short plan at the end. A pledge by the older officer to use a 3-count pause, to welcome the word supervisor as a safety tool, and to model calm language in practice sessions. The plan also asked him to participate in 3 community trainings and answer respectful questions from residents. It turned a hard hour into a map. The department released a new training video within 10 days. It opened with a quiet scene. A simple traffic stop, an officer speaking the reason, a driver narrating each reach, a partner ready to step in if the air changed. The screen showed 5 plain words: pause, explain, ask, check, escort. The narrator said, "Time is a tool. When you use time, everyone sees the road ahead." Officers watched it on shift and then practiced in small rooms with chairs pushed back to make space. They took turns being the driver. They learned how it feels to, "Here, I will reach with my right hand now," and how it feels to announce, "I am going to take your wallet from the bag on the seat." They practiced partner language. "Let me take the lead. We can slow down. Supervisor on the way." They learned that quiet is not weakness. It is good control. Other cities heard about the clean, simple changes. A nearby town asked for the peace guide and the role-play script. A state standards group invited the department to present the steps at a monthly meeting. A national conference for training officers asked for a 30-minute case study on small steps that prevent big harm. None of this was a victory parade. It was a friendly exchange of better tools across many communities. The guide fit anywhere because it was human-sized. The city also kept its promise on data. 3 months later, it posted the numbers in clear charts and plain text. The average stop was 45 seconds longer because officers used more words at the start. The number of stops with raised voices dropped by half. The number of medical checks called when someone said, "I need air," went up, which was a good sign. Needs were heard faster. Duty to intervene reports increased, and most were small, just a partner saying, "Let me take it." Use of force. Incidents during traffic stops fell sharply. Complaints dropped too, and so did fear at the corner where the original stop happened. These were not magic numbers, but they were honest steps in the right direction. On a mild morning, the younger officer did a ride-along with 2 new recruits. They stopped a car for a rolling stop at a sign. The driver looked worried, hands shaking on the wheel. The younger officer spoke softly. "You are stopped for a rolling stop. I will explain the steps. Please keep your hands visible. If you need to reach for anything, please tell me first." The driver took a deep breath and nodded. The recruits watched how that one sentence changed the air. When the driver asked for a supervisor because he felt nervous, the younger officer said, "Okay, we can wait. There is no rush." The recruits wrote that sentence down like a recipe. There is no rush. Later, back in the car, one recruit said, "I thought control meant speed." The younger officer smiled. Control means clarity, he said. Speed can wait. The city started a small award called the Prevention Star. It was not shiny. It was a simple pin. It went to officers who prevented harm by speaking with care, by stepping in early, or by honoring a request for a supervisor that changed the path. The younger officer received one pin at a brief morning meeting. He only said one thing when asked to speak. Please help your partner slow down. That is not a betrayal. That is the job. The room nodded. It sounded like an obvious thing. But obvious things save the day more than people realize. The woman in the green sweater who had recorded the stop joined a new community observers group. They trained with the department on how to record safely, how to share videos with investigators, and how to give clear statements that stick to facts. She co-taught one session with a sergeant. She told the class, "I didn't raise my voice. I named what I saw. It mattered." The sergeant added, "Your calm helped us. We see you as partners in safety, not as critics on the sidelines." That sentence traveled fast through the neighborhood. People started to feel like the city was a table with more seats. A local reporter asked Amara for a long interview. She chose instead to write a short piece for the city's website. It was called "Safety is a Slow Language." In it, she wrote that safety grows when officers and residents share the same simple steps. She wrote that a request for a supervisor is not an insult. It is a light in a fog. She wrote that words like "please keep your camera on" and "I need a little space to breathe" should be heard as safety lines, not challenges. She closed with a sentence that would be printed on posters later. Respect is not a favor we give. It is the road we stand on together. Inside her own agency, she built a small program called Neighbors First. It sent federal staff to observe local training days and to share the peace guide in joint sessions. It asked agents to practice the same calm scripts during community visits. It also brought local officers into federal classrooms to talk about daylight work on real streets, where words and time matter as much as tools. The program did not make headlines, it made stronger habits. Months passed. The city kept posting numbers. The checklists stayed on station doors. The ride-along sign-up filled fast. The civilian review panel held 2 open meetings and made a public recommendation: keep the peace steps, expand data, and continue the prevention star. The council voted to fund more training hours so no one would have to choose between a busy shift and a learning session. The chief sent a memo that said, "We are measured by what we prevent." That line appeared at the top of roll call notes and at the bottom of training slides. It became part of the air. One afternoon, Amara walked past the library where her day had begun weeks before. Children were leaving with books. A patrol car rolled by slowly, then stopped at the corner. 2 officers stepped out to help a driver whose car had stalled. They pushed while the driver steered. When the car reached a safe spot, one officer said, "Let's take a breath," and they all laughed a little. Not because it was funny, but because it felt good to say that in a city that now understood the value of one slow breath. Later that week, a new stop unfolded on a different street. An officer spoke the reason. The driver said, "I feel nervous. May I ask for a supervisor?" The officer answered, "Yes, we can wait." A partner said, "I'll call it in." A bystander filmed from a calm distance and then put the phone down because the air never changed. The stop ended with a warning for a broken light and a small thank you on both sides. No one wrote a story about it, but it was the story, the quiet kind that proves change is real. In the end, what stayed were not big speeches. What stayed were small rules that became daily habits. Say the reason, say the steps, wait for the answer, watch the breath, welcome the word supervisor. What stayed was the ID,